Okay. I guess in lieu of what happened last night, um, I guess I'm going to do something a little bit more off the cuff tonight. Um, what happened last night was I had rescheduled my live stream that I had originally planned to do on Friday because I didn't feel all that great on Friday. And basically, hey, what's up? Yeshua is coming. Good to see you. Yeah, basically, I'm just doing this ad hoc stream because I got a little too passionate last night, but also at the same time, I got a little too casual, and I did something that I never have ever done in the history of all my videos. Is my soldier's mouth came out, and I dropped a certain word that I never have ever said. That I try to never say in any sort of video. It was a first. So I know people have sensitivities to certain words. I mean, yes, I'll say the word. I'll say the word shit because to me that's not a curse word. It's a synonym of excrement, of feces. So to me that's not a big deal. But the f bomb I have never ever said in the history of any of my videos. So, yeah, I decided to set that one to private because although it was a great stream, it was a great stream. As far as the information, the content, uh, I was very disappointed in how I handled the absolute very end of it because I got a little bit too passionate when it pertains to what I was discussing, and I might have gotten a little too casual. I forgot that I was talking to a bunch of different people, and I was treating it as if I was talking to like one of my friends on the phone, or something like this, instead. I mean, I am on my phone doing it, but I'm saying I was treating it like I was having a one-on-one conversation, and just going off on a tangent, and not like I was talking to a live audience. So yeah, when I realized that it slipped out, I'm like, oh man, I'm like, no, 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 I can't leave this up because I don't want anything that sounds even remotely unprofessional to push people away. So I did the right thing. I set it to private. So yeah, so I decided to just go with putting it on private, and tonight I'm going to do just a more, you know, just ad hoc sort of off the cuff sort of stream because I wanted to explain what happened yesterday. I mean, it was jam packed full of good information about the Chinese mostly, but also the Russians and how they stack up, and how, or rather, how we stack up against them. Um, hey, Jennifer. Um, hey, baby. But yeah, I was basically, I might have gone on a little bit too long. Maybe 2 hours is too long for most people's attention spans. But either way, at the very end, I sort of screwed it up. So I'm just going to leave that on private until I can figure out a way to cut out maybe like the last minute or so of it. If I can do that, then I'll put it back. Because, I mean, it was a very, very good, very informative live up until about that point, like a minute before I got off. My phone was about to die too anyway, so I sort of had to get off regardless. But uh, yeah, so tonight, my phone's fairly well charged. I'm going to discuss a little bit of what I did last night, but I'm also going to cover some other things. Not things I'm an expert on by any means, but things that I see as being more or less common sense. And I'm talking about the way that some of these elites are trying to do their automation and the way that certain things are going to happen. I mean, let's be real. Let's be 100% honest with ourselves. Do people think that most people will be alive to even see the AI come to full fruition? I mean, really, do people think that most people are going to survive a collapse, that they're going to survive famine, that they're going to survive war, that they're going to survive invasion, an utter, complete destruction of this land, like even the Bible describes. Do people in America think that they're really going to survive to see much of this AI beast system come into play? I really don't see that. That is why my kingdom work is and has really always been to get people ready to survive a war. A war. Not just a war, but a series of them. Because first, you're going to have your internal style Syrian civil conflict. It'll be like just like what happened in Syria, but here, maybe for slightly different reasons, but you are going to have a lot of factions out there butchering each other, and you're going to have this very weak, very poorly prepared central regime trying to hold it all together. Because let's be honest with ourselves. Again, this regime has a woke, depleted military. They are not even big enough to police, but possibly a small group of large cities, maybe the state caps of different states, of all 50 states, and maybe the borders, maybe, but that's a big if because we have a lot of borders. This land is far too vast for a ground force. Okay, our entire military is only 2.2 million. That's if you put together all branches, all components. How in the world? Okay, our ground forces are less than that because our ground forces are our Army and our Marine Corps. Those are the forces that could operate on land. And I'm not including Navy security forces or Air Force security forces or elements like that. But of our ground forces, our Army is only like with all components of it, reserve, regular, active, and guard. You only have like 1.2 million of them, and then the Marine Corps is like a few 100,000. So, we're only talking a very small force. I mean, like these guys cannot police the entire nation at the same time. It's just impossible. They don't have the personnel. They don't have the equipment necessary to be able to do such a thing. This place will be a madhouse. It will be a madhouse. So, let's be honest with ourselves and get the whole idea of America being under some sort of a Mart Law situation out of our heads because it doesn't even make sense. It's impossible. Numerically, mathematically, it is impossible. But what they could do is in very, very limited areas. Yeah, sure. They can lock down a few cities, but that is the absolute most they could do. They just don't have the men. They just don't have the manpower. Do you understand how many roads are in this country? I made a video about this before. We have literally 4 million miles of roads in this country. 4 million. And to operate a checkpoint, you would need a battalion, roughly, to have, I'm talking about a large checkpoint. You would need a battalion that you could run in shifts, in 3 shifts, 3 8-hour shifts. You would need a company that could operate as a QRF, a quick reaction force, the actual squads that man the checkpoints themselves out of a company, and you would need the logistical companies to resupply that group that's manning the checkpoint, and you would need other companies that could rotate through. And that we're just talking about one checkpoint. So our very limited forces, let me explain something. Back in 2020, when they experimented with this, they tried to set up checkpoints in New Mexico and along Idaho. It was New Mexico and Arizona. They tried to set one up, and they tried to set up other ones in Idaho and Montana. Guess what? Nobody noticed, and hardly anybody remembers, because most people weren't affected by it. Why? Because this nation is too vast for a few roads to be even noticeable. They just don't have the forces to be able to hold down every road, every city, every town all at the same time. It would have to be like a traveling circus if they even tried something like that, because they would have to go from city to city to city to city to city to city. And by that point, everybody would know that they were coming and what they were up to. And by that point, it would be a freaking madhouse. And I said freaking, not the word I said last night. So nobody lose their cool. But I'm just trying to emphasize how, serious this is. That look, China is the only nation that could single-handedly occupy the USA, the whole of it, the entire bit of it, simultaneously, everywhere, ubiquitously. They are the only nation with forces, and I mean their army, their paramilitary, their reserves. They're the only nation that could conceivably occupy this entire place all at once. I'm saying by themselves. They wouldn't even need allies, but if they wanted to use allies, then they could divert other forces to other nations and other theaters and so on. But even with just like 10 million troops of their own, whether that's a mix of their regular military, their reserves, their paramilitary elements, with 10 million troops, they could invade and occupy much of this country. And with allies like Russia, who have fairly sizable forces, like maybe could contribute another 2 million or 1.8 million. And then you have all the smaller allies contributing like a foreign expeditionary force of their own. Then you could occupy a country this big. You would need, okay, when America gets invaded, let's put it this way. It will be 3 to 4 times bigger in scope and scale than the biggest land invasion in all of human history, which was Operation Barbarossa, when Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. That was when 4 million Axis troops crossed from Germany, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Hungary. They all crossed into the Soviet Union and invaded along a over 1,000-mile long front. Oh, and Finland too. Let's not forget that. They invaded from the Arctic Circle all the way to the Black Sea across a very long front. So when we're talking about America being invaded from multiple directions and from the inside and from inside, from the Trojans simultaneously, you would at least, like in my scenarios, you would at least, at the bare minimum, you would need 5 million Trojans that would be scattered nationwide. And you would need 7 million externals at the very least. That in and of itself is 3 times bigger than what Barbarossa was, because you take that 4 million Axis troops in Barbarossa, you multiply it by 3, and that gives you 12 million. So 5 million inside in the Chi-Com CCP regime owned properties, what they bought and paid for, and you also have the forces coming in from Mexico, from the north, and whoever does coastal landings on the different coasts, all at the same time. And then paratroopers, of course, but they're a small part of it. But yes, you would need at minimum 12 million to occupy a nation of this land size. So our little rinky-dink 1.6 million ground forces, or 1.7, I'm talking about when you combine the whole Army, the whole Marine Corps, and our whole Army's not even here. It's not even here. It's scattered to the 4 winds. It's scattered all over the world. Same with the Marines and our Navy, everything. Our whole military's not even here. So, look, they cannot do martial law here. It's impossible. They just don't have the mathematical ability to do it. They don't have the logistics. They're not going to, at the rate that these Western elites have burned us down. They have burnt down their own power base. They made our military woke. It's a bunch of woke, green. By green, I mean inexperienced, by and large, because it's a new generation of forces. It's a bunch of woke, green, poorly trained, increasingly poorly equipped, very poorly led forces. Do you think for 1 second that they would even have a chance to broker some sort of a peace inside of a country that is literally tearing itself apart in a multiple factional sort of a sense, like a internal conflict? Do you think there's even the most remote chance that that's even possible? I just don't. I just don't see it, because the only one that could do it is that they oh, and what you're saying, Watchmen, an infrastructure they no longer have to maintain. I was talking to Jennifer about that on the phone, and I was making fun of that. And what I was making fun of that about was that they can't do automation like they think they can. I would love to see a robot with human dexterity or a automated vehicle that couldn't be hacked, because when they automate everything, it'll be connected to the internet. Anything that's connected to the internet can be hacked. It can be hacked, it can be messed with, it could even malfunction. So when these automated vehicles start flying off the roads and crashing in ditches, or when these trucks roll in the middle of the highway, or when a tire pops, who's going to fix it? Who's going to go out there and fix it? I would love to see these robots do it. I would love to see a robot try to change a tire. I would just love to see that. Monograph was the first person that ever explained that whole concept, and it was so funny to me. I just had to repeat that here. I had to repeat that. It's too funny. It's hilarious. These robots are not scary. They're very primitive for what they're able to do, and they're actually pretty easy to defeat. I mean, all you have to do is ruin one of their sensors with spray paint, or you can catch them in nets to where they can't get themselves out of a net. I mean, my God. I mean, these things are not nimble. They don't have a lot of dexterity whatsoever. They're not very intelligent, and if they have a human operator, well, all bets are out the window then, because no human operator is going to know how to get these things out of traps, especially when they can't see, or especially when it's tangled in a net. I would love to see how that works. It's just it's laughable. This whole notion in the West of a fourth industrial revolution is plagued with so many issues from the outset. The whole thing is a joke. To me, it is. I don't see how them tearing themselves down and thinking that they can go to where they're automated is going to save them. It's not going to save them. You can't have a weak military. You can't have a depleted, torn down military, and you can't prematurely switch your whole entire system around, your economic system, and burn it down and think that you're going to survive. You're not going to make it. As a land, as a nation state, you are going to be conquered. You will be defeated. China and Russia are going to crush this place. It's like when you stomp an insect into the dirt. It's going to get stomped down so far into the dirt, you won't even see it anymore. This place, there will not be one brick sitting on top of another brick by the time the occupation of this land is over with by the foreign troops. Okay? Look, people can talk about the UN all they want, but the UN, the Sino-Russian invasion will be under their own flags because they're doing it for their own reasons, okay? They're not invading under a UN flag. They might, some of them might use it as partial disguise for like their saboteur forces or whatever you want to call it. But by and large, their Trojans are here. They get their orders from Beijing, and they get their orders from Moscow. They don't take orders from the UN headquarters in New York. It's not. New York was where the kings of the earth fornicated with Babylon, the whore, in the city of Babylon. And there's even a part of New York City called Babylon. So there's prophecy on the money, again, about the city of Babylon. And there's also the land of Babylon, the nation state, which this whole country is the land. And if you were to go and listen to my Jeremiah videos, it explains how fast, how quick, how easily this nation is invaded by people that come from lands that their language is strange to us, which would be China and Russia. We're not going to by and large, our people are not going to know what these people are even saying. There's not many Mandarin speakers other than maybe Chinese people themselves in this country, and there's definitely not many Russian speakers either. So again, unless they have ties to Russia or they really studied it outside of the school system, I just don't see how very many people. I see 100% how that prophecy fits. Okay, and we're not just talking about them. We're talking about North Korea. We're talking about other little allies like that too, like Pakistan, like Iran. These people that speak Farsi and Pashto and Dari and Korean. I mean, the Belarusian language. I mean, you're going to have people coming from different parts of the world that most Americans aren't going to understand what they're saying, and it'll be a coalition that rallies around Xi Jinping in Beijing and also Vlad over there in Moscow. So the Sino-Russian coalition that they're going to put together will be a broad coalition of many nations, and they're going to invade the U.S. But really, China could do it single-handedly, and I wouldn't even doubt that Russia could too. They would just need a slightly bigger military to do that, but to where they could occupy things generally on their own. But China has a big enough conventional military to where they could occupy a land this vast all by themselves if they wanted to. Nobody can hold a candle to the power conventionally that China has. Nobody. Technologically, and I'm talking about with their military. I'm saying technologically, the size, just the whole scale and scope of what their military and paramilitary has and is, their whole industrial production, their number of factories for industrial manufacturing. Sure, they don't export a lot of their weapons, but why would they? Why wouldn't they build weapons for their own forces as a priority over exporting weapons? I mean, they export old, obsolete things that they see as obsolete, that don't have any use for them anymore, or very simplistic things like rifles, machine guns, mortars, stuff that is a dime a dozen for them to produce. But they keep predominantly much of the military hardware they create. They keep most of it. And they're cranking out new designs left and right. And they already have tons of old designs that have been upgraded, much like we still use old designs that have also been upgraded. So all the old designs that have been upgraded in China are passed down to their military and paramilitary, like their reserves in their military and then their paramilitary, while the active military is the cream of the crop. They get all the newest up-to-date stuff that the Chinese war industry produces. So you have these different category military forces, like I said last night in China, for their military and paramilitary. You have category A, which is your top tier, best equipped, best trained, ready to deploy at a moment's notice forces. Then you have your category B, who are still very well armed. They have stuff that is either equal to, or maybe in some cases slightly subpar to Western standards, but there's so much of it that they can definitely take on Western forces. And then you have category C, which is very light units, like your national militia paramilitary forces and such that are like home defense units. They have a bunch of mortars, they have a whole shit ton of anti-tank missiles. They have armored trucks, MRAPs, maybe some heavy stuff that's been passed down, like the ZTB-89s, the things that have like those. They were designed to be tank killers with the 120 millimeter rifle tank guns on them, but things like that got passed down once the regular and reserve Chinese military needed better, newer, up-to-date things. They would pass down old designs. They didn't sell a lot of their old designs unless they even deemed them as obsolete. China has such a vast amount of equipment and storage, and I'm talking about tanks, armored vehicles like AFVs, like MRAPs, and APCs, which are armored personnel carriers, IFVs, which are infantry fighting vehicles. They have so much of that stuff in storage that it's even more vast than what they show as their active units have and their reserves and such. They have lots of stuff in storage for their humongous paramilitary forces, like their national militia, their marine militia, their so on and so forth, National Construction Corps, PAP, all of it, PLA strategic reserves. And then you have your PLA reserves. Now, your PLA reserves are going to have slightly better stuff than the paramilitary, but they have a 5 million man reserve, which is huge, in addition to their 2.5 plus million man regular army, and that's the ground forces. Their whole military, their whole active military is 4 million. Then you add the 5 million reserves, that's 9 million. Then you add the 20 million man paramilitary. So then you get 29, very close to 30 million. That's there. There's no word for it besides gargantuan, massive. It's vast. It's vast. The equipment they have is vast. It's more than anybody in the world has, and they're just cranking out more and more and more nonstop. They have boosted their production level about 5 years ago when they had reached parity with us. They had been building more and more factories up until that time, and now their factories are cranking out freakish numbers of new designs. I told you all about this on my stream last night. In fact, I went into such great detail, I probably put a lot of people to sleep with it because it was a lot of information, and I probably bored people to tears. But people need to know this stuff because this is the stuff that's coming at us head on. Not some BS idea of what AI is going to do and all this other stuff. That stuff's BS. You're not going to have to worry about that until after World War III. All the stuff they're doing with AI right now is nothing but a beta test at best. At best. They're putting in the infrastructure now, even though much of this nation's not going to exist very soon. They're still trying to test it here. But it's being tested all over the world. It will be in other parts of the world. It'll be in the ghost cities. I told you all about the ghost cities. The reason why the ghost cities are being built is because they're not going to be targeted during World War III, as there's hardly any people in them. Only the people that are in them are the people that maintain them. But they're all already hooked up with the 5, with the AI. Those are the ghost cities, and they're all over the world. During World War III, they will not be targeted. Everything else will. Every human settlement we have ever known, especially in America, will be wiped off the map by conventional, or maybe some even by nukes, but mostly conventional means. Over time, things get destroyed in wars of occupation. Not just in the invasion phase. I'm talking about over the course of the occupation and colonization of America, because they will be suppressing the American people that are already here, the natives. They want to exterminate us. I don't know what people don't understand about that, but that is what their plans are. They say it out of their own mouths. And I'm not talking about the Western elites. I'm talking about the Eastern elites, who are just as evil, if not more evil, than the Western elites. Their syndicate is separate from the Western Luciferians. They are the secular humanists and the Islamists when it comes to the allies of China, like like Pakistan, Iran, so on. And then you have Orthodox Christianity in the guise of Russia and some of the CSTO states. So you have a really strange mix of alliances there between those nations. And if India joins, then you'll have Hinduism represented. So what you have is essentially a hodgepodge of secular humanism, which is the world superpower in China, leading a bunch of Islamic and other secular humanist nations, as well as, and Islam isn't secular humanism, that's a religious theocratic type of thing. But even though I don't believe it's the right thing, and that's all I'm going to say, is it's still considered a religious system. But you have secular humanism, which is the ism, the communism, the socialism, the fascism, the Nazi. It's all secular. It's all secular humanism. And secular humanism always leads to the worst atrocities known to man. I'm talking about torture, R to the ape, R to the ape, murders, mass destruction, war. Secular humanism is the most ugly ideology, the most evil ideology known to man. And China is a despotic, secular humanist regime, and they don't care about anyone. They definitely don't care about the West or the Western elites themselves. They hate them. They have a whole nother mindset apart from what they believe. So, no, they don't care. They don't care about about the West or the people of the West or even the elites of the West. To them, the elites of the West are a rival mafia syndicate, as I often say. It's like the Colombos and the Genoveses, or pick two Italian mob families. It's like how they make deals, but yet they'll conspire behind each other's backs, even have sit downs and business dealings with each other, or go to war with each other. How, like, mafia syndicates go to war. Well, it's the same concept with these elites from different parts of the world. They are not a unified front. They won't be, but for a very short time. Like when the Antichrist comes and unifies them all by flattering them. He attains his kingdom through flattery because he doesn't have any power of his own. He has to flatter the 10 kings who will remain after World War III and get them to give him their power and work with him. And he will, but only for a short time. It says that his one world government, he will only reign with the 10 kings for 1 hour, the beast and the 10 kings for 1 hour. And in biblical time, 1 hour is not very long. It's just a matter of months. It's not very long. There's speculation into how many months it is, but it's not long at all. And then it starts to show cracks, and it starts to fall apart. And the wrath of God begins to come in, and it just falls apart at the very end of the tribulation for the beast and his kingdom. But until then, the East and the West are separate. There's other factions even inside the West and inside the East. There's different factions, but they're two different blocks because they're two different schools of thought. They're not of the same school of thought. They just have business dealings and negotiations with each other until it's time to go to war. And they will. There will be a World War III. Both sides have at least agreed to that much, that they are going to have a war with one another. But the West will not succeed because it tore itself apart while they built themselves up and continue building. They never stopped building. They built up since the 90s, the end of the 90s, all the way till now. And we have declined since about, I would say, 2010-ish, about the time they started to gut our military. And by that time, a lot of our nation had been deindustrialized and so on. We've had a lot of secrets sold to other nations like China and under that time. Much of that was done in the 90s, which gave China the ability to produce their own indigenous capability of manufacturing and producing at such a high volume. And being able to technologically not just compete with us, but surpass us. They have surpassed us in many key areas of technology, if not all of them. Same with Russia, really. You can put China and Russia basically in the same category as far as technologically speaking, in terms of how advanced they are. But China is ahead of everyone because of their vast size. Their sheer number of manpower, their sheer number of factories, the sheer number of steel they produce, the sheer number of everything that they manufacture, and I'm talking military and consumer goods. Nobody can hold a candle to them. Nobody, no one. They're not one nation on this earth can compete with China in those categories. Not with their conventional militaries, their technology, their anything. The only thing China hasn't poured a lot of money into was their nuclear arsenal. But they don't have to have a huge nuclear arsenal to still be the world's superpower. 1,000 nukes, as long as they all work and the delivery systems for them are highly effective, i.e. hypersonics and missile cloaking, 1,000 is enough to get the job done. That can destroy two large nations, okay? That's plenty for what they need it for. But their conventional military should frighten people more than nukes do, because that is going to be the tool of their foreign policy, of their aims of colonizing North America. And Russia too, because of course, I said Russia is already starting to see the benefits of what being a key holder of resources is doing for them. Already their nation holds so much of the world's mineral wealth, oil and gas, and they are so big in terms of resources, food production, and they have China to export their resources and food to, so they don't need the West. They do not need the West. In fact, the sanctions boomerang so bad, it only hurt the West. and it infuriated the elites of the West. You could see that they were visibly frustrated, and by the rhetoric and tone that they take on the entire thing. It's not what they say, it's what they do. It's what they do. That is what I mean by the tone that they've taken. Sure, they say a lot of bad things as it is, but the tone that they've taken in all of this is even harsher than what they're even saying. And that's because Russia wouldn't bow to their system, their ideology, their ways, their Western ways. Because again, Russia is a separate entity from the West. It is not of the Western camp. It is of the Eastern camp. It is of the Eastern Eurasian mindset. So they are more austere. They are more cautious and careful. They're more deliberate. They're better planners. They play the long game. The West is like too quick, too haphazard the way the West does things. And that is why we've become inferior and we are going to be overtaken and destroyed. So, all that aside, I just wanted to say that, we're in a state where this fourth industrial revolution, people try to say it affects the whole world, but it really doesn't. It just affects the West. There are many non-aligned nations that don't align with the ideology of the West, and you can see it. If you're paying attention, if you're astute, you can see it. And I'm not only talking about the East. I'm talking about non-aligned nations in other parts of the world that don't have an opinion one way or the other. But they sure aren't on the West side. And the West is becoming more isolated because it's isolating itself. It's becoming hated. So naturally, that's going to push more people into China's arms and into Russia's arms. So, again, there's a lot of misconceptions about how things are playing out on the world stage. There's a lot of hysteria, a lot of hype. I told you all last night before I got really passionate about this that you cannot buy into like almost all of what you see on any sort of a media outlet. Surely not on mainstream, but you also are now seeing a lot of mainstream narratives somehow making it into alternative circles. And I'm just cautioning people to question all those things. I'm talking about current events things. You have to be really level-headed and use really good sense in understanding that, you have to understand what the goals of Russia and China are. And then once you understand that, you can start to see what is hysteria, what is illogical, what is irrational, and versus what isn't. And the war that's coming is going to be a very tiny part nuclear and a very large part conventional, okay? It's not going to be predominantly nuclear. They're not going to destroy the things that they want. That they're going to try to surgically take it at first. And over time, over the course of an occupation, they're going to just destroy more and more and more as time goes on. But that's because initially they want to surgically take everything intact that they're able to, surgically. You can't be surgical with nukes. Not really. I mean, maybe in some instances, if it's like a specific thing and it's only a small, low-yield device or something, but otherwise, you cannot be surgical with a full nuclear strike. You are going to destroy everything, and that defeats the whole point of going to war with us in the first place. They want this place intact. I'm not sure what people still don't understand about that. Yes, they will use some nukes. But it's not going to be predominantly nuclear. It's going to be mostly conventional, and with some other more advanced weapons supplementing that. You're going to see very potent electronic warfare, very potent delivery systems for conventional weaponry. You're going to see directed energy weapons. You're going to see things like this. You're not going to see a ton of nukes. Sure. You're going to see maybe a few dozen small, low-yield tactical nukes. Yeah, of course. But you're not going to see a full nuclear war. That's just not going to happen. It makes literally no logical, rational sense for them to do that. None. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that I want to go back to my original topic was that This country and I'm not leaving China and Russia and all the East out of this. If we're just talking about the West, i.e., the United States, i.e., Europe, we have already gutted our capabilities militarily. We are done. We are finished. It's already over. But people want to keep riding the coattails on past glories that don't even exist any longer. If they would just take time to understand the most basic, the very most basic of facts, that this is not the same military. It's not the military that it was even 5, even 10 years ago, like when I was in 10 years ago. It's not your father's military. It's not your father's country. This is a different place. This is a very different place. The people have no say in anything that happens here. And soon all pretense of any sort of a civil society is going to be yanked away, because they're going to get. It's like others have said. They're going to get tired of pretending at some point, and they're just going to drop every pretense of pretending that we have some sort of a civil society, a civil functioning regime. And this place is going to become a nut house. People are going to go insane and tear this place down just that much more. Remember, my invasion scenarios were a best case scenario. It was taking the pace of life as we live it now. I'm talking about my documentary, my 36 videos in that playlist called 96-Hour Invasion Documentary. That is taking our society as it is right now and throwing an invasion into it suddenly. That was a best case scenario. Now, if we're talking worst case, we're talking a nation that's already tearing itself apart in an internal civil style conflict. And then these foreign troops come in when we're at our weakest and just steamroll everybody without any real resistance whatsoever from anyone of any kind. They're not. Remember how the Eastern people think. They don't care about people here whatsoever at all. They're not going to get. They don't care about having American lapdogs. They don't care about any of that. I'm from the school of thought that they are going to crush traitors because they're going to feel if they betrayed their own people, then we damn sure can't trust them either. So they're going to crush them. That is what I understand of the Eastern mindset. Okay. They will use Benedict Arnolds, but when they're done with them, they're going to slaughter them. Period. That's what they're about. They're not about pampering traitors. They're not going to give traitors preferential treatment. And people that think that way, they're just it's over for them. It's over. They're going to be goaded into a trap. And they're going to basically offer themselves up on a silver platter to the Chi-Coms, to the Russians, to all their tiny allies. They're going to offer themselves up on a platter because essentially what they're doing by approaching them and saying, "Oh, we're willing to turn on our people," is that, okay, so you guys can't be trusted. And they're just going to take them right away and they're going to slaughter them. Those types of people. They're not going to give them a chance to do anything. It's going to be the same way with the elites and everybody else. Nobody is going to get special treatment when the Chi-Coms invade, okay? So I hope people would get that out of their minds. Nobody is going to get special treatment. Everybody is going to be either slaughtered or enslaved, or they're going to have to learn how to defend themselves and stay on the move as nomads, like in my stories, like in my playlists, my documentaries, and even my review video playlist. I told everybody in that review playlist all the most important things in the stories that you should have paid attention to if you didn't realize it. I made it easy for everybody to go and see everything from the logistical aspects to the very most basic aspects and everything in between, the tactics, everything. I showed everybody literally how everything is going to happen. That's about as close to reality as it gets. And if you all aren't interested in it, then I don't know what else I can do for you, because that's about as close to reality as it gets. Yeah, most people here don't have to worry about the AI and all this other crazy, kooky nonsense. I'm not saying AI is not dangerous. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm saying that there's an order of events as it happens in the Bible. And there's an order of events that is going to happen in real life because we can see it building up all around us. And it matches perfectly what the Bible says, okay? So all these people worrying about stuff that's further off in the future, most of them will not be around to see it. Most will not be, because they weren't getting ready, they weren't paying attention to the most important things, which is how to survive famine, which is how to survive war. They weren't paying attention. That is the most important things people can be doing. America, see, these people that deny World War III, I just don't understand them. I don't understand their mentality. I am a combat veteran. And like my friend in here, the Yeshua is Coming channel, he too is a combat veteran. It's very hard for people like us who have been to a conflict environment, a conflict zone, a war, to understand how people can even deny that there's going to be a World War III when their evidence of it is everywhere. You literally have to be mentally retarded to, or so philosophically blind to the point to where you let philosophy blind you from reality, to where you think that there's not going to be some sort of major war in the future that brings everything to a head. Absolutely there is. Absolutely. Human nature has not changed. It is the same as it was in ancient times. There is nothing new under the sun. Human nature is the same as it's ever been. People think now we're in a more civilized time and all that. Bullshit. Bullshit. This is not a more civilized time. This is a more confused and chaotic time than we've ever seen in the history of humankind. Or maybe since the days of Noah, I'm sorry, but I'm talking about now, lately. This is the most chaotic time in modern human history, okay? This is the most confused and chaotic time. Look at everybody around you. Most people couldn't even begin to even understand this channel I have or what it's really all about. And it's about educating people to be able to navigate and survive. It's my kingdom work. It's what God wants me to do. God has instilled it upon me. Chad, I want you to take time out of your own life. I want you to take time to reach out to others and to show them what you know, what you experienced, how you've combined your knowledge and experience. I want you to take that, make presentations, and compile research, and I want you to blend it all into one presentation, and I want you to show these people what is coming. And I want you to teach them about the new way of warfare, hybrid warfare, 4th gen warfare. It's different from 3rd gen, which 3rd gen was blitzkrieg. 2nd gen was trench warfare. 1st gen is walking across the field shooting at each other. So, or even back as far as medieval times, it was the same concept with archers and spearmen and swordsmen, cavalry. It's the same. It was 1st generation warfare, lasted all the way up until about the American Civil War, that time frame. So then it switched to 2nd gen, trench warfare, then 3rd gen, blitzkrieg. 4th gen is the combination of the Trojan horse, blitzkrieg, and new innovative technologies. So that is 4th generation warfare. And I am trying to reach people and educate them on how easily we can be defeated because we're not ready for it. Because people are still thinking it's World War II. And I just think to myself, what the hell is wrong with people? People act as if things don't change. They're still riding on former glories, former past situations. Things change, and people have to accept that. We're not an empire anymore. We're at the end of our rope. We have been. I would say the American empire officially died when we fled Afghanistan in disgrace. It was how we did it that was so embarrassing. It embarrassed this whole nation. And now we think we're still at the top when it's plain to see that we have a new military, a purged, woke, wimp, wussified military. We have this now, poorly trained, extremely poorly led, and increasingly poorly equipped and armed. And people think that this armed forces has any credibility anymore? Give me a break, man. Give me a break. Give me a break. Give me a break. All right? That's all I'm going to say. We're headed into a very dark time, and people better get their priorities in order. People better stop playing around. They better learn about warfare. They better learn about military doctrines. They better learn about from experienced people that can tell you about how tactics work, because you're going to need this stuff one day, because you're going to need to know how to avoid the foreign invaders. You're even going to need to know before that how to deal with an unruly crowd, an unruly mass of people that is trying to butcher you so they can take what you have. And I'm talking about the bandits. I'm talking about the factions. The moment we go into a Syrian-style situation, it would behoove you to pay attention to my past work. I did that for you. I didn't do it to waste my time, okay? If I wanted to waste my time, there are many other ways I could have wasted it. I didn't have to do it that way, okay? But I did that because I genuinely care about people, and I want many people as possible to survive, to come out the other end of this. Even though you're going to come out the other end to witness the ghost cities coming up after World War III, to witness the AI coming into its full, it's not going to come into its fullest until after World War III. You have to get through that. You have to get through the famine, through the pestilences. You have to get through all of that first to even see this AI garbage become reality. Again, I'm not saying AI isn't dangerous. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm saying that shouldn't be people's top priority. It's unrealistic. All right? I live in the real world. I don't live in a kooky, crazy sci-fi fantasy land. And that's all I'm going to say. Okay? And I base that through the lens of a soldier, of an ex-soldier, a combat veteran. That's why I see the world the way I do. I lived in the real world. I've seen it. I've seen what third world nations, what destitution looks like. I've seen what conflict does to countries, okay? It ain't nothing nice. And people better get used to that. Your future is going to be a lot more primitive than it is high tech. I'll just put it that way. So may Yeshua bless and keep you all, always. And thank you very much for coming. I will be leaving this up.